Right, here we go. It's almost the weekend once more with your illustrious host, Joe Toole.
Thank you, thank you. It is indeed almost the weekend. And welcome back. Welcome back, I guess, is a weird way to put it, but here we are again with my fellow co-host, King among Kings, Solomon Islands owner, and Lord of the Moon, Darian.
Oh, it feels good to be here. I'm actually really excited for this week because
Yeah?
it's a crossover of two of my favorite things, which
Yeah,
is
hell yeah.
video games and film.
Oh, you spoiled it. I was going to ask you how was the week and what have you been playing?
Oh shit.
We jumped right ahead. It's
I'm
fine.
look, I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm good now. I had a pretty downtime heavy week. I wasn't really able to read,
Mm.
which was very frustrating, so I couldn't play Disco Elysium at all.
Yeah, damn. That game's 100% reading, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Um, so I watched season 1 of Fargo, the TV series,
Uh-huh.
and that was excellent. I had heard it was good, but the storyline is different from the Coen Brothers movie, but the themes and atmosphere and humor is all there, and it just feels so great to be in that world again.
Yeah.
The
Where did
the
you watch that?
It was on Netflix.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but the thing I loved the most about it was the hitman played by Billy Bob Thornton. He's so incredibly charismatic and he has so much screen time. It's not like Silence of the Lambs, where our boy Anthony Hopkins is on there for 10 minutes and still wins the Oscar because he's just dripping with charisma.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of deal here. You just can't take your eyes off him, and he's in every episode, and he has long sequences, and it's just awesome.
That's awesome. So,
It's
wait,
really good.
did Anthony Hopkins win an Oscar after 20 minutes of performance in the
Yeah,
movie?
he won the Oscar for Silence of the Lambs, and
Oh,
he was only on screen for 10 or 11 minutes.
that's amazing. That's so
Mm.
crazy. I feel like
Mm.
I knew that, but I hadn't put together that he's such a minor. I mean, he's like a major character, but he's not. He doesn't have much screen time
Yeah,
as far as like the
yeah,
movie is concerned. Yeah, that's so awesome.
yeah. Really, really impressive, and hard to disagree with as well. Like Jodie Foster does an amazing job, but it's just man, when casting meets character in the ultimate matchup, it's just so evident. So like,
Yeah,
yeah, I got a lot of time for his scenes in that movie.
yeah, yeah. I can't remember if I mentioned to you, but I think I did. I was taking an acting workshop for like 11 weeks a little while ago.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, you might have mentioned, but I also might have forgot. That
yeah.
that sounds awesome. I've always wanted to do something like that. How did it go?
Oh, it was so fun. Yeah, it was great. So the title of the course was acting for reference. So when you're animating, especially for feature film,
Hmm.
there's sequences where like the actor has read the line and you need to take the audio and act to it
Oh,
and to create
cool.
the performance. And so like what a lot of animators do is they film themselves doing the scene, doing acting the shot
Hmm.
using a camera, right? And just sit in front of the camera or stand or do whatever that acting requires.
Yep,
And and a lot of the time, most folks don't know how to act. And so you get
dude.
a lot of, yeah.
Acting is really hard,
Mm-hmm.
and people have these base opinions like, Keanu Reeves is an alright actor, and it's like when you're at that level, you're actually a pretty good actor.
Mm-hmm.
It's only obvious when you see actually bad actors. And when you
Yeah.
see actually bad actors, it's like, oh fuck, actually. A lot of the people I have scratched away as average are actually pretty good compared to
Yeah.
all the actors that there are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was one of those, there was a moment sort of um toward the end actually of the course where I was like, oh, this is like a real craft that's like just as deep of a bottomless skill well as animation. You know,
Oh,
like
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Animation's one of those. I mean, there's a lot of crafts like this, right? Where like you dive in and you're like, oh, how hard can this be? And you're like, oh, it's kind of pretty hard, but I can see where the ceiling is, right? I can see how to get there roughly, and then you sort of, as you approach that point, that does like that stretching off into the distance infinitely moment where you're like, oh, I know nothing. I'm
Yeah.
but a sweet child strolling through the forgiveness forest. But ahead of me is the thorny stretch of hell that is learning this craft. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I had that moment with the acting workshop. I was like, oh, I know nothing. This is so impressive how deep this goes, and just how it's like it sort of slots right on next to animation as like something that's useful to know to be able to improve your what you do within animation. And so I was like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is dope. This is such a cool thing to learn about.
That's
And
awesome.
so much of it is like so fundamental as well, right? Like knowing what your character wants to do in the scene is just like something that I feel like people don't ask themselves before they even start acting, doing the acting in their shot. They're just like, oh, I'll just move around and gesture, and then that's kind of what acting is, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you end up with like all of this really contrived, feeling weird, telegraphy style acting. That's like something's off about this. And that was the other thing as well. Is like it really gave me like a nice lens through which to critique other animators' acting stuff. So
Right.
knowing the sorts of questions to ask and like really just being like why to a lot of the stuff, because a lot of the time animators feel the need to move things around as being animators, like we like to animate stuff, but a lot of the time in an acting piece, when people are really acting, they're not moving very much. They tend to
Yeah.
not do a whole heap of moving unless the scene calls for it, right? There's scenes certainly where that is the case, but like animators they'll get a shot or they'll get a line and they're just like, oh, every single phrase needs to have an action associated with it, so
Right. Yeah.
you get a lot of that.
Yeah. And I think that why Rabbit Hole is really deep as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what lifted the veil for me was starting to watch interviews with actors after I'd seen
Yeah.
a film about how they played the character and their perception of like what the character wants and that kind of thing. For
Yep.
me, that was the eye-opening, like, oh my God, this is actually really involved
Yep.
because everyone is going to have their own interpretation of the character.
Correct.
It's like Shakespeare, where when you read Shakespeare your first time, it's just written in a way that doesn't particularly guide you around what the purpose of each scene is. Like the
Yeah.
dialogue is there, but there are a lot of like questions and mood changes that someone who's experienced with Shakespeare or like a Shakespeare director will pull from the dialogue that isn't obvious to you initially. And
Yeah.
I feel like really experienced actors all have that when they look at a character, like they just kind of make it their own and maybe tie it
Yes.
to some real life experiences. And then
Yes.
that kind of develops the why rather than, like you say,
uh,
that
you're a
kind
smart
of.
man. You basically pull apart the the crux of what the course teaches throughout the 11 weeks. But yeah, so like each week was like each week we got given an audio to listen to, and it would
Oh,
be
yeah.
like usually from a not so well known source, so we didn't have any preconceived attachments to who the character was or how it should be acted. It was usually between 30 seconds and a minute long, which is quite long. Normally in animation for acting you try to keep it under 10 seconds just because acting for animation is quite complicated and most people struggle.
Right.
But yeah, so it was nice to be able to like have a bit of a longer breadth of time. And so you had like a week to film the reference. And so when you think about it, it's like a week is a really long freaking time to sit in front of a camera and act. But really, the most of the week is spent thinking about who you are and what you want in the scene and whether or not you can get it. And
Right.
like, and developing who your character is, because they don't tell you anything about who your character is. You just have to invent it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, the line might be you're playing a woman talking to her daughter and your daughter is seeing a guy who she's been interested in for a long time who you think is like a deadbeat or whatever, so you've got to like choose whether you want to play the daughter or the mother and how you like taking in what they're telling you. And a huge part of it as well was like when you're not acting, when you're just listening to the other person talk, that is a really crucial part. like
Mm,
like just actively listening is kind of 50% of the journey. There's like a whole other, part of it where like a lot of actors and animators really struggle to just like wait for their turn to speak. Like they really
yeah,
just like
yeah,
sit there and their face goes blank while they're trying to think up the next line, and
yeah,
it's like a huge hurdle to overcome.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that was a really fun course, man. I really, I wish I had have done it like 5 years ago. Like it's that kind of
Yeah.
foundational beginning. Like everyone should do this if they're
Oh,
looking to get into the craft.
that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great to do things like that.
Mm-hmm. And then yeah, my week was good though. I had my birthday yesterday. No, yes,
Yeah.
yesterday. No, 2 days ago. Oh my god, yesterday was a write-off. My god.
Oh, yeah. What did you do for your
uh,
birthday?
for my birthday, well, I went to work, and then afterwards we had a celebration at a place in the city called Chuckle Bar.
Okay.
It was just me and work friends and friends, and
Nice.
there was probably about 12 or 13 of us, so it was pretty small. But I don't know if do you know Chuckle Bar?
I don't. It sounds like I'd like it though.
Yeah, I think it used to be called New Guernica or something like that.
Yeah, that doesn't ring a bell either.
It's like in between two buildings um, in the city. It's basically like a little alleyway, but smaller.
Oh, not
Um,
the place behind Ferdy Dirk.
no, no, it's not. It's not near Ferdy Dirk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just they just have cocktails and drinks and stuff, and yeah, no, it was a really good time. I didn't
That's awesome.
quite realize how drunk I was getting until I was really drunk. And then I was like, I need to slow down because I don't know what's going on anymore. But no, it was a wonderful time. Heaps of people came, and yeah, it was great. I ended up leaving at like midnight or so. But they partied on, and I saw like they went to karaoke, and I was just
Oh
like,
my
hell yeah,
God.
tons of friends hanging out, doing stuff. Like I like that vibe where you don't have to be the host so much. You just get to just chill and have a good time.
Totally.
Yeah,
I think that's getting older.
yeah, that
I
might be
think
getting older.
yeah. Yeah, people are just well equipped to handle themselves and everyone can have a good time.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really nice.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But yeah, it was real. I don't like to like brag about being hungover or anything, but it was just I haven't. After you turn 30, hangovers tend to be an event, and so yesterday was mostly just sleeping. Yeah. I've been playing Hunt. Have you been playing any games this week?
No, I had the
Is it the
crispy week,
crash?
but
Yeah.
Hunt just sounds so much fun. I can understand why it's got its tendrils in you.
Yeah, it sure does. The group that I'm playing with are work friends, and we're playing through the event right now, and it's just um, we're getting towards the end of the event because I think there's like 3 days left.
Yep.
But we're all just like we all must finish. Like you have to finish and get like all of the rewards and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so we're probably gonna play more tonight
Hell
slash
yeah.
today. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So does Hunt have anything you can tie to film, or is it a
Oh.
100% video game?
Um. So there is a TV series getting made based around Hunt.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty solid answer. That's
Yeah. But it's one of those games where all of the lore is in text entries that are completely optional. And
Oh,
I don't
okay.
really have much interest in them. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the sort of game that like they've made it so optional that it has no hinging on, I don't think, your enjoyment of the game
Okay, so
because it's so secondary.
this is a great segue to why do video game films suck.
Yeah.
And it's because that, like, for whatever reason, I feel like the majority of the time they choose games that don't have enough substance to translate to a story that should be told via film.
Mm.
And I'll see if I can bring it up live, but I actually looked at like a list of films that are based on video games, and
Hmm.
the list is just demented. Like, did you know there's a Far Cry film?
No, is it in development or is it finished?
Oh, it came out years ago.
Oh
It
no.
it came out years ago. Um,
Oh
like,
dear. Yeah.
yeah, and there's some films that people would definitely not consider good films, but absolutely have an entertainment value.
Yeah.
And I reckon that's the like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat series of films
Yeah.
where the budget is just nowhere near what it needs to be. And that serves it so well because the effects are trash, the acting is subpar, and it's just
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the sweet spot for video game movies.
Yeah.
Whenever they try and go full ham with like a Hollywood budget, um, it's not a good film, and it's not like I don't know. It's not tied to the video game enough that you're gonna care about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like Doom. I don't know if you saw that movie with The Rock
Oh,
and like Carl Urban. I saw that in the
God.
cinema, you know what I'm saying?
I saw that in the cinema.
Like, because
Oh
I was 15 and
yeah.
I'd been playing Doom 3, which I've got a huge soft spot for. I don't think a lot of
Oh,
people like
Doom.
that game, but
Doom is
it's
incredible.
yeah, well no, I mean the third one specifically.
Oh wait, is that
Um
the one that was like on Xbox?
yeah, yeah. And it was like they really lent on the horror aspect
Right.
of it
Yes, I remember it. I rented it once.
yeah,
Back when you
yeah.
could rent video games. God, that really ages me right there, doesn't it?
Throwback.
Back to the video
Yeah.
easy slash blockbuster days where you could rent consoles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What a time.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean,
Renting.
bring it
uh,
back. I want
uh,
to go back.
yeah, dude. I think we have lost something beautiful in the way we browse
100%. Oh, I was
videos.
talking about this the other day. Yes, keep going.
Well, I mean, I was like a video store fanatic. You know, I
Yeah.
lived in this cozy ass quaint beach town, and it had one video store run by the one dude with a pug, and
Uh-huh. Glorious.
it it just like there was no rhyme or reason to the selection of films they would get in. So
Right.
like it had everything from like student films made down the street to like, you know, the latest blockbuster. And I
Yeah.
feel like I discovered so many films that I would never have found, or even if I had found them, probably wouldn't have watched if I'd just been looking on Netflix or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's something so optimized these days about the browsing experience. You know, like they
Mm,
A/B test the cover image of the show, which is such a weird thing. When you think back to like the video store experience, a lot of the time you would like find something based um on the DVD cover or the VHS cover. And
exactly.
sometimes it was just the spine of the VHS because they were stacked
Mm,
so closely together. And so you'd
yeah.
have like the font to go off and maybe a bit of a splash of red or something. And that's kind of it.
Mm,
And then like everything else was just, you just had to flip them open and have a look and, or like, you know, take it out of the, off the shelf to be able to see the front cover. And yeah, as a result, you get some really dope front covers. Whereas I feel like with Netflix and everything like that, it's so optimized. It's like they all kind of look the same. It's like the iOS app icon version of man screaming to the right. You know, have you ever seen that stuff?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think because we live in the world of the algorithm,
Mm,
um, I heard from a friend, and I don't know if this is true, but it would make a lot of sense, is that there's quite a few alternate covers for like every show or movie on Netflix,
yes.
and it basically analyzes what you've already seen. So, for instance, I've watched a lot of Toni Collette movies on Netflix because I
Hmm.
love Toni Collette. And so every time Netflix gets something that has Toni Collette in it, she's the picture.
She's the
And
picture. Yeah.
yeah, and same goes for like Gyllenhaal and all these actors
Yeah.
that I follow and will just kind of watch regardless of what kind of movie they're in. And it knows I like these actors, and it's like, look,
That's
it's
amazing.
this person was in this hyper trash movie that you wouldn't usually
Y-
like, but Jake
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal, and I'm like,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You get like it's not even just like A/B testing, right? It's that level of content curation where they'll go out of their way to have every actor featured in the movie have their own version of the icon or of the cover image or whatever.
And
Um,
that's an interesting way of Netflix selling you content to watch, right? Because
yeah.
it's just taking a pretty good guess at what it thinks you'll like. But the issue with algorithm based suggestions is that sometimes the algorithm is shit. Like when it uh, divides up films by category, I feel like it gets it wrong all the time, when
Yeah.
it suggests horror films or thrillers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, going through the video store, when you're in the horror section, they were all bona fide horror films,
Yeah.
and
And
most
the
of them
covers
you
were scary.
and the covers were fucked. Like the
Yeah.
covers would scare the shit out of you, and you're like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is gonna
I
be a good time.
I remember like sometimes not wanting to walk down the horror section because my eye would like catch a glance of some fucked up horror image on the front cover. Like that's how fucked up it was back then as a kid. That's dope. That's so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
The problem that I have with the Netflix thing is it becomes so homogenized. You know, it's not like that. There's no room for
Mm,
surprise anymore. Like the whole
mm,
point of the video store is like, oh, all the new releases of that movie that I wanted to watch are gone. I guess I'm gonna have
mm.
to walk down this like section of the video store I don't really go down very often and just grab something because the kids that want to go and like the wife has got dinner or whatever. Like there's all sorts of situations where you're just like I don't have what I want available to me, or even just like I don't really know what I want, and so you just wander around, and that feeling of like wandering around really isn't in the browsing experience of Netflix. I don't think it can be like that.
Mm.
Unless you're in like virtual reality, and even then there's like the problems with that. But like
Isn't
yeah,
isn't that funny though that like we're like, how can we bring that feeling back? It's got to be VR,
yeah, it's
like
just got to be VR. It's so
we're
trash though. It's such a like poor analog. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
And maybe that's just like this is going to come up a lot, but like the grumpy old man in me we mentioned last week. But yeah, I just need there's something about that experience of going around the aisles of the video store and having your eye caught by something that you might
Mm.
not have seen and then getting it and either hating it or it being like the coolest thing you've ever seen, like it's you just don't get there anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the key difference, right? Is just discovering gems. I
Yeah.
don't really discover gems on Netflix, even
No.
though they've added that surprise me button. Have you seen
Mm.
that button?
Uh-huh.
I'm never gonna click that button ever.
Me
Like
neither. Fuck
I
that.
yeah, yeah. Like I've got a watch list. If it was a random button specific to my watch list, then maybe. But it's just not the same as having something catch your eye.
Yeah. It goes back to the Elden Ring example of being guided to, an experience versus uncovering it yourself. Like it's that
Yep.
that is so much more. The surprise me button is the most oxymoronic thing because it's like because you're pressing a button like that doesn't mean you're going to be surprised. It defeats the purpose of the button. And it's probably
Netflix.
algorithmically organized to like give you something closely resembling your interests that you've already, like
Oh, I'm sure it is.
come
I'm
on,
sure it
man.
is.
That's not a real surprise.
Oh my God.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's like all you've eaten all your life is like chicken wings and pizza, and then like you're like, oh, surprise me, and then what you're gonna get is gonna be either chicken on pizza or like chicken wings again. Like it's not a surprise.
Oh my God. Yeah, and like tying things back to video games, I hired so many shit video games.
Mm.
Like,
Oh yeah.
I think that's probably the main way people played Gex. I don't think
Yes.
anyone
No one
ever
owned Gex.
actually owned Gex. It was
Yeah.
just one of the most hired games ever.
Ugh. Incredibly said. Yeah, I'd forgotten about Gex and my lack of expect. Look, here's the thing. I would like get Gex, and the game would like have a scratch on it or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, I guess this one's fucked. Like, there's no, I'm never gonna get to play Gex this time. And then I'd rent it again, and then same thing would happen. Like, why did I rent it again? Like, something about the front cover on Gex really
Yeah, God.
had me
And
obsessed.
yeah, there's just like I think we've talked about this before where the B grade style of game that is coming back now.
Mm,
Like it used to run rampant in the hiring days because
yeah,
I think that was like a genuine way for publishers to make money. Like
selling to
Matt,
video stores.
yeah, like Matt Damon talks about it in one of his interviews where um someone asks him how streaming services have changed the industry.
Mm,
And he said, well, there's a lot more pressure to produce the kind of movies that everyone likes rather than the kind of movies that
yes,
I like. So
yes,
he tried to say, he wants to make a drama film, which is what he did a lot in the 90s and was his favorite kind of film to be a part of. And, you know, you might have $100 million budget for that film and then $50 million in marketing. And to earn that back in the cinema wasn't really 100% of the goal. It
yeah,
was to earn everything back eventually and make a profit, but you would have this second wind when it hit the video stores.
right.
And like, that overnight, I don't know, I feel like it was like, I don't know, $5, $6, sometimes even $7, like
Yeah,
a
quite
just,
expensive.
yeah, like a just to DVD, and you could only have it for the night.
Yeah,
Like it was like a scarcity thing, and it was like a recency bias thing, and it just
yeah.
like made it exciting, and that was a real um opportunity for publishers to make their money back. And I wonder if the same kind of thing applied to video games, where like how many
Mm.
people bought Sarge's Heroes? You know, no one bought that fucking game, but so many people
Callbacks.
have played it because it
Yeah,
was just like it was in every video store I ever went to during that era.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I have a memory of renting. What was it? Is it one? It was a Naughty Dog game way back when.
Oh,
Uh,
Jack and Daxter.
no, they did another one. They've done like remakes of it recently. It's like the little Crash Bandicoot, the little Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot, renting that, and then
Oh yeah.
like yeah, getting to the end and um having like again like a scratch on the disc, and we couldn't finish it. I just remember that being so disappointing.
Savage. That's where the Nintendo 64 team won.
Yeah,
You
with
can't scratch
cartridges.
that shit.
Yeah, yeah, true. But yeah, no, I think you said an interesting thing earlier where you were like, where the problem sort of lies in instead of making something that someone is interested in, like the director or the writer or whoever it happens to be who makes the thing,
Mm,
you get what most people would click on, like, and that becomes
mm,
this like homogenized, watered down, very contrived, predictable in a lot of senses, trash from the floor,
yeah.
and and yeah, I think that's my main problem with Netflix right now is even though there's some stuff on there that's probably worth watching and good, a lot of the new things that I'm seeing come through are all the same. And a lot of
Mm,
it's really geared towards like, 18, 19-year olds, I feel. And
yeah.
I'm just not, I'm not interested. I don't want to see, you know, I don't want to see any of the stuff they're putting up.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so yeah.
it's something I think I mean, probably every industry suffers to a degree based on what's popular. And
Yeah.
when things are popular for a long time, like it just breeds complacency in video game
Yeah.
designers. So you
Yeah.
have, Far Cry 10 or whatever they're up to now. Like I know the most recent one was Far Cry 6, but there's been a lot of Far Cries that haven't had a number for some reason.
Mm.
And like it's the same with Mass Effect, right? Mass Effect, like BioWare are giving updates on Mass Effect 4, and it's like we know you made Andromeda. Like don't try and bullshit us. We
Yeah.
we the disgusting masses pleaded for it, and then they got something crap and they hated it, but they still pleaded for it. That doesn't change the
Yeah.
fact that the desire was there.
Yeah. 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 There's like studies around this. I think it's like a real marketing thing where like I can't remember the exact example. It was something to do with Campbell's soup though. They were like trying to figure out whether or not offering more choices was better than offering fewer choices.
Mm.
And they ended up with this like, they had this whole range of different types of soups and, different amounts of chunky, and what they ended up seeing was like a lack in sales of any of the soups because there was too much choice, right? There was just like this
Mm.
paralyzation thing that happened. Whereas
Right.
when they were like, there's two types. There's chunky, no chunky. That's it. You get to choose. That's all you get.
Mm.
They like, they saw a great deal more business.
Mm.
And there's this whole thing of like the consumer doesn't really know what they want,
Yeah.
really, when it comes down to it. They think they know. They like they get together and there's like focus groups, and this is the problem with the algorithm is it tells the publishers and the streaming services what people want, but it doesn't
Mm.
really tell them what they want. It
Yeah.
doesn't give them any semblance of like useful data around what could be interesting to happen next.
Mm.
Like it just tells
Yeah.
them what's happening now.
Yeah, exactly, and that's like that shoots the creative foot
Mm-hmm.
in the foot. That was a bad analogy,
No,
but
you.
um, but I was gonna ask, did you see that recent Harry Potter game trailer?
Yes,
So the gameplay one that was like
yes.
maybe yeah. So don't you think that is the kind of game that an algorithm spits out? Like
Yeah.
popular IP, and then everything in that game is exactly what I want to see with zero
Mm-hmm.
surprises. Oh, it's
Yeah.
open world. You can fly your broom. You
Yeah.
got to collect things to make potions to help you fight. It's just, and it's
Yeah.
you're a Hogwarts person, and you get to hang around in your dorm and like talk about sex with underage teens, and
Oh
like
no.
it's and it's just like, yeah, I want all of that, but is that actually offering anything at all? Like we've talked about it before, where games just have nothing to say, like the
Yeah.
40th iteration of Pokemon, or
Yes.
like the next open world game. And
Yeah.
it's just like we get stuck in this rut where it sells and people see it and they froth at the mouth, and then
Mm-hmm.
the cycle continues.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, this is very much down that pontificate about the current state of video games thing, right? Like it's
Mm,
super reliant on growth and capitalism and year on year sales, right? Like there's all of that stuff that plays into it pretty heavy. But yeah,
mm.
I agree. I think that Harry Potter game looks really exceptionally shit. But the problem is that it has so much in it. Like I can tell a lot of people worked really, really hard on creating what they've made here, and they've got like, like it's got everything. Like I remember when I was working at Gree and we were working on that game. Can't remember what it was called now, but it had. It was just like the most designed by a committee. It was like take the three most popular things in the mobile gaming space and mash them into one game. And
Right,
so
I
there was
see.
like city building, there was a shooting game, and then there was like a Clash of Clans style game,
Mm.
all in the one thing.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
And they
remember
all,
shooting Zambas on your phone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, the whole goal of it was like, oh, they'll, anyone who plays this game will have something for them, and you don't have to necessarily engage heavily with any one section to still enjoy the game. The problem
Mm,
was it was just like a balancing nightmare.
right.
Because all of the different games had different types of currencies, and there was supposed to be like interconnectedness between the modes, and it's like you really need like a single person to be like heading up the design, but they had like product owners signed on and signed off throughout the couple of years that I was there on the different parts of it, and it was just like such a web tangled web, and I kind of feel the same way about this Harry Potter game. There's just so many parts. There's like, like there's the open world part, and then there's like the crafting part, and then there's like
Mm,
the engaging combat part, and then there's like, a base building part where you like have your dorm or whatever, and you get to like fit it out with all of your stuff. It's like,
right.
god damn, like this is so many things, so many
Yeah.
things. Like I don't, I actually don't. I get fatigued looking at it because it's not like there's no one thing for me to really grip onto here. It's not like, oh, I'm excited to like, play Grand Theft Auto because there's like cool cars and I get to drive them, like, and then everything else just kind of falls away and it's just part of the experience. It's like Harry Potter's like, I guess I want to, and there's just like too many things.
I think cohesion is probably the most important factor when it comes to modern games that
Mm,
try to stick so much stuffing into the pig.
yeah,
So like Elden Ring is a pretty good example of a game that has great cohesion.
yeah,
Like the main aspect of the game is exploration, and when you explore, you find challenges, and those challenges often result in rewards, and those rewards help you
to the
either
next one.
overcome other challenges or they make exploration easier. And it's just like
That's the
that's
formula.
that's
Yeah,
pretty great.
yeah,
Like it's an example of a game where everything in that game serves something else in the game.
yeah, yeah,
And I think we take it for granted in games like Elden Ring, or games that FromSoft produce, just because they're so good as a standard.
yeah.
I know I take that kind of thing for granted, and it's only when I play something like Ghost of Tsushima or Control where like I hear a lot of good things and I'm like, this is a supremely average experience.
Yeah,
Like it has some amazing things, but it has some torturous things.
yeah.
And like, I feel like people overlook cohesiveness in video games because it does a bunch of other stuff that is either old stuff that they've done really well, or in rare instances, new stuff. Like in Control, they did some new stuff that was pretty
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
But yeah, I think cohesion is like the main challenge when it comes to game design and like finding meaningful interaction in a world like Harry Potter.
yeah. Yeah, look, I think you've really struck something pretty good there. Cohesion is hard in video games because we don't usually have a strong direction. Usually, what it ends up being is like a few leaders within the game sort of work together, especially in larger studios, work together to have some amalgam of all of their opinions and vision. And
Right,
compared
yeah.
to a movie, like The Lighthouse or something, right, where like the cohesion is so solid, like
Oh
everything
my
fits
god.
in the world, and it's like to the point of like odd choices, but the odd choices make sense because they're from the same person that made all the other choices.
Mm,
Like it's
mm,
that singular. It's a little bit, there's like a kind of darker side to this, which is like the auteur side, where it's like people there's no challenging the auteur. You just have to. It's like a yes man thing.
mm.
And that's like the flip side of it a little bit, but I think that's why a lot of people really like indie games, is because they're made by smaller teams with simpler vision, usually by people. There's not a whole lot of room for creative wheel room in smaller teams when like maybe there's three people in total working on it, and two of the three people don't care about the look of the game. They're concerned about does it work, and and marketing it or something. Like
Yeah.
all of the rest of the work's getting done
S-
by this one person, so you
s-
get
s-
solid cohesion.
Right, and I think that also ties back to walking into a video store. Like
Hmm.
the constraints you have actually boost your creativity in a way. Like because you're only given a specific set of parameters
Yeah.
and maybe a specific time and budget, you're like, all right, well this is all we can do, and we have to do something, so
Yeah.
let's go for it.
Yeah.
Like rather than any of the yearly AAA games that are this kind of muddy pool of all their old games and maybe
Yeah.
one or two new mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah. That have to do something part of it is really beautiful because it's like,
Mm,
and it's something that is lost and a little bit worrisome when you look at services like Game Pass and PlayStation's new offering with what they're trying to do with the PlayStation service, where you get, you pay a subscription like a Netflix subscription and you have access to a library.
Yeah,
So
and I know that that was something you talked about in your news segment, but that
yeah,
was a couple of weeks ago now, and still we know nothing about like,
there hasn't
you
been
know,
much of an
we
update.
yeah, we know the price, and you still don't know what you're getting for the price, which is
Yeah,
so dumb.
yeah, it's bonkers. But yeah, so you get, that aspect of having to choose something, I think is so relatable and maybe even a little bit nostalgic for a lot of people. Of like, I get to pick one video game for Christmas this year from grandma or whatever it is, like
Mm,
and I can only pick one. And you go to the shop
mm,
and there's like, oh, there's like 30 games here. I guess I'm
mm,
gonna pick the one with like the coolest cover or the one that's on the cover of the magazine that I read. Like
mm.
whereas a subscription service, you get access to hundreds of games and you pay one thing. And sure, it's convenient to have to pay one thing and you get hundreds of games, but there's no impetus for you to really play any of them because you didn't make a choice. You
Right.
know?
So that asks the question, does convenience kill creativity?
Oh, I think I think capitalism kills creativity.
100%. Yep, I'm with you. I'm
Yeah.
with you
I,
all the way.
I think there's a certain part of it where it's like, yes, the artist needs to survive, they need to be able to eat and support themselves and grow and move forward in their career and all that sort of stuff,
Hmm.
there is a solution for, but I don't really know the answer right now. But yeah, the problem is that when you have systems like the one that we're in right now, where the masses basically decide the vision of what gets made next,
Mm,
you end up with, instead of constraints, um, you end up with like a status quo, or like a quota to fulfill, right? It's not like a constraint,
yeah,
it's like a quota. And
yeah,
so yeah, it does kill creativity, in a lot of ways. But I don't want to say it as like a broad sweeping statement. I think there's a lot of really wild, cool stuff happening in both film and video games these days, despite all of this stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think in a way, it might even be a cool new constraint for the medium to kind of not overcome, but move through. So you'll
mm,
get like games like maybe the one that I'm working on right now, which has really weird. There's no real, no one's asking for this fucking game, I did. Um, and movies that I can't think of right now off the top of my head, but that no one is really expecting to see, and
mm,
that don't belong on streaming services. They may end up there as a result of their cult status or whatever, but
mhm.
they're not designed to be on there.
Yeah, and something that I feel I should say is just because something is popular doesn't mean it's bad.
Correct, that
You
too.
know, we're not Aphex Twin from the early 90s. It's just that when things are popular and more people try and do them, it just
Mhm.
gets stale pretty quick when like, every year there's three open world games that come out and like, in one you've got a sword and one you've got a gun or whatever, but
Yeah,
it's just like it's not that exciting.
yeah,
And I think especially in young people there's this weird, and it's like a very human thing, there's this weird idea that you have to feel loyalty to something. Like if I buy
yeah,
Far Cry 3 and I really loved it, there's some weird human thing where I'm like, okay, I'm loyal to the Far Cry series. Far Cry 3
yeah.
was really good. Okay, 4 wasn't quite as good. I don't know what the next one was, but I'll get that as well. And like, really, it starts to become more about like your loyalty and what was good in the past rather
Yeah,
than what you actually enjoy in the present.
totally. Yeah, that's a really interesting point as well. Um, I want to sort of pivot us around a little bit because I was watching the Tim Rogers video on Pac-Man throughout the week, like 4 hours long.
Oh, how
Um,
good is Tim Rogers?
I'm so glad you liked him, dude.
Oh, dude. He's just his attention to detail is something that I really admire in people,
Mm.
and like he tackles the way he handles talking about video games like a project. Like
Oh, it's so thorough.
Yeah, yeah, and it just like it reminds me of like the stuff I love about project management. Like to engage me, give me like 100 problems that concern 80 people at once.
Yeah.
You know, that really gets me thinking, and that's exactly how he does these interviews, sorry, these reviews. Like he has his intro, which is usually like an hour
Hmm.
depending on the game. And he just starts to talk about everything that relates to this game for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the case of Cyberpunk, it was extreme, and that was
Yeah, he
like,
went overboard.
oh man, that was the first review I saw of his, and like I was 40 minutes into the video. I'm like, wait, this is an intro.
Yeah.
Like we're not actually into it yet. And he talks about video game chairs and watches and sunglasses and clothing and the history of the genre
Cyberpunk. Yeah.
and
What
what the
is
genre
cyberpunk?
actually means, and
Yeah.
like its history in literature and in movies. And I was just like, oh my god, this is just so satisfying to
Yeah.
watch.
What's
So
so impressive is just briefly with the cyberpunk thing is he doesn't just list them. It's like he actually went and played them and read them and watched
oh,
them. You know, all of this stuff is like things he's now consumed for
oh
this content.
right. So that's the difference, right?
Yeah.
There's it's one thing to be knowledgeable, but like I feel like when I would say prepare for certain aspects of a project, I would just read up on them and be able to talk to them, but I'd basically be regurgitating.
Yeah.
Whereas he has his own experiences with everything he talks about and is able to give his specific opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And so during this Pac-Man video, he was talking a lot about like um, the various machinations and iterations of Pac-Man over the years
Oh
that
yeah.
have all been like really odd, often not by the original creator of Pac-Man, analogs of the thing. And he
Right.
was talking about how some games end up going on to have movies or properties associated with them. Like there's actually a Pac-Man TV show. Um, but then he was like, "Why is there no Mona Lisa movie?" And then he said, "Because Mona Lisa is a work of art, and there's no Pac-Man movie, or there should never be a Pac-Man movie because Pac-Man is a work of art." I was
Oh,
like, "Yes, I mean there is no reason to adapt a perfect work of art, the style of Pac-Man or Tetris. Like there's no need for this. It has no grounds to exist, and so like anything that does get made is kind of this like weak
I
sort
mean,
of go
how
for it.
how could it not be weak?
Yeah.
Like it's just the the only reason it could be made is because of money, which is
Mm.
like a reason that a lot of things are made, but like it'd just be such a stretch to
Mm.
try and make a Pac-Man movie. Like although it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility since that fucking Emoji movie
Yeah.
exists. Like
Yes.
that's a movie that exists,
I
and it's
know. I've seen it.
about um have you seen it?
Ian McKellen is in it.
No,
He
really?
plays the poo emoji.
Oh my god. That
We have
is,
fallen so far.
oh
Uh,
god.
yeah.
I don't know how to assess that.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
No, I
You can't
can't.
continue. I've derailed this 100%.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
no,
that okay, so the Pac-Man movie, I was like, yeah, no way, like that can ever be a thing. But then I thought of the Emoji movie,
hmm
and like because the Emoji movie has just like existed outside of my reality. I know that if you type Emoji movie in Google, there's like a Rotten Tomatoes score and it's on
hmm
IMDb, but like otherwise that movie doesn't exist for me. But
hmm
now that you've seen it and Ian McKellen voices the poo emoji, like it's suddenly very real. And
Yeah.
like, is Pac-Man coming out in fall of 2023? Like, when is it
Mm,
coming? Because now it's definitely coming.
yeah. Well, Pac-Man was featured on the he was on the poster for a movie. I can't remember what it was called. Was it called Switch? Oh, fuck. There was
Oh,
a huge,
Wreck-It
yeah.
Ralph? That video
No,
game, maybe?
yeah, he was
No?
in Wreck-It Ralph. But Wreck-It Ralph is a slightly different beast. Oh God, what's the time? How much time do we have? I don't want to
We
dive
got...
too deep. We got 50 minutes. We got 50 minutes. Okay. You know what? We'll cover Wreck-It Ralph another time. But yeah, I think it's like certain video and oh God. So yeah, so certain video games like Pac-Man and maybe even like The Last of Us
Hmm.
and maybe even like um Mario,
Hmm.
they're just like they're so grounded in the medium, like the design
Mm.
of all of these things, maybe less Last of Us, but the Mario and Pac-Man, for example,
Hmm.
the design of them is so much a part of their like existence. Like you can't pull any one part of any of these games apart and then not still have the rest of the game. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like you
Yep.
can't take one of the ghosts out of Pac-Man or like the maze that like sends you from one end to the other out of Pac-Man. You don't have the game anymore. It's
Yep.
just not the same.
Yep.
Um, and so going so far as to abstract it into an entirely different medium is just like it's not sacrilege, but it's like it's just like futile. There's no real you can never do it.
Right.
It's like
And
it's like turning water into gold or whatever. It's just not do it.
exactly. And I think that's why video game movies suck,
Yeah.
because that's what they try to do. And even if you just focus on something within a movie that's extremely important, like the story,
Hmm.
like movies have been around for a lot longer than video games, especially story-based video games. And when you take these IPs that have been made into movies, like Sonic and Mario and all that kind
Oh
of thing,
God. Yeah.
like you there's no story to pull, right?
No. Yeah.
Like
There's
there's
nothing there.
so you've got the license to be able to write a story from scratch, and still it just always ends up being just shocking, just
Yeah.
absolutely shocking. Like, even, and I'm not just saying that regarding video games made into movies for kids. Like,
Hmm.
maybe some kids get some enjoyment from the Sonic movie, and that's great. But like, even using Doom as an example, which is like, it had Hollywood actors and a Hollywood budget. I'll be honest, I don't know what the budget is, but like, seeing that movie for
You could tell.
2005,
Yeah.
like, it had set design and it had set pieces and action.
Hmm.
Like, there was a lot going on. Um, and it's just like, why wouldn't you just make a new movie? Like,
Yeah.
from
With all of those resources.
exactly, like, you've got those resources. You're gonna have to break away from so many things that make Doom the video game.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you just have like a hell-based event happen in a sci-fi world, and you
Yeah.
get to create brand new characters and a story to match?
I agree. I think that's a great point. I want to return just really quickly to the Mortal Kombat old movie, and
Oh yeah.
there's like a Double Dragon old movie, and even maybe even the Mario old movie. Um, to a certain
Oh
extent, I think like
yeah.
there's like you were saying, like these movies don't necessarily take themselves super seriously, and
Mm.
so like there's like an amount of schlock and camp that comes along with those movies,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that we are past the point of ever being able to do that again. I think
Mm.
anyone that tries to achieve that sort of schlocky, campy, weird, lo-fi video game remake of a movie, video game version of a oh my god, I'm having a stroke. Video game movie adaptation um, is like kind of doomed to fail, right? Like there's unless you're going to go and like try to set the tone, like do all the things that they did back in the 80s, like have no visual effects really, and like make all of the prosthetics out of physical effects, like
Mm.
doing all that
Mm.
stuff, which most people don't know how to do anymore. It's like mostly a lost art. I think
Yeah.
it's still going to turn out to be garbage. Just it's just like there's no way to revive that faithfully.
Yeah, well, I think if they were to do it, they'd need to do it in a manner that makes sense. And for that to make sense, you need a whole team of movie producers and executives to have a very strong understanding of the video game content that they're making use of.
Mm.
So like, I think BioShock has been pretty popular in like on the internet as like what video games should be made into a movie. Like everyone's
Mm.
like BioShock, the universe is so cool. And it's like, yeah, if you just took the world and nothing else, like you didn't take any of the characters or the story or anything like that, if you just took the world and then created your own story within the world, then you have a chance of like hitting on something that would resonate with BioShock fans,
Mm.
but not have to compete with BioShock the video game.
Yeah. 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 I I think it's going to be real tricky though, because then like the further, if there's like, big money involved, it'd be like the further we stray from the IP, the less likely we're going to bring those fans along, you know? Like
Yeah.
the whole point of like doing the thing in the same world is that we can say, oh, Andrew Ryan, or we can say, Splicer or whatever. Like we have to be able to just, like, have these key touchstones. I'm just in the mind of a investor executive right now, saying
Yeah,
like these are the
yeah.
things that the consumers of this thing have said are the reason they like it, and so they need to appear in this
Right.
product in some way.
Exactly.
And so yeah, it's
Exactly.
sort of doomed. It's always doomed.
Yeah. Yeah. And unless they lose that, it's yeah,
Yeah,
it's futile.
yeah.
The
Anyway,
future
do
is a
you want
lie.
to hear some news? Some
Yeah,
video game news?
give me some news.
Hell yeah.
Bloodborne Part 2, it's already coming.
I love how that was I've outdone myself with Bloodborne card. We can't get better news than Bloodborne card.
I truly believe that.
Okay, so here's the first piece of news for the week. No Man's Sky Outlaw is a new No Man's Sky update.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes to all things No Man's Sky. I
Yes.
have so much appreciation for that game.
Yes. One of these days I want to go back, because there's been several other updates in between this one and the last time we spoke about No Man's Sky.
Oh man.
And this one's all about space pirates. And
Oh
so
man.
there's like
Yes.
several systems that have been like infested with the space pirates, and it changes the way you dock on like space stations and stuff like that. There's all sorts of cool things going on that I didn't have too much of a chance to read before I wrote all this stuff down. But yeah, it looks really
Oh,
cool.
that's awesome. Who would have thunk that absolute failure of a release would turn into something so beloved
Mm,
and so cared for by the developers?
yeah,
It's so rare.
yeah. It's actually getting to the kind of the point of like, bro, it's okay. Like you can stop
Sean,
now.
you can chill.
You
You
can
have
relax.
redeemed yourself.
Yeah, you redeemed yourself 3 years ago. Like the game was fine at that point, like it was really good, and now you've just gone about like so far above and beyond. It's become like probably one of the best space games you can play.
Right, right. It really ticks a lot of boxes,
Yeah,
especially as far as like space exploration goes.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's incredible. It's got everything. Like there's nothing that game doesn't have in terms of space sci-fi content.
love it, love it.
This one's a little bit niche. There wasn't a lot of news for me this week. So
That's okay. I'd like to hear what you think is good enough to grace the it's almost the weekend airwaves.
all right, very good. The standard is low, let me tell you that. So Elden Ring player named Let Me Solo Her kills Melina.
Yes,
Yes,
I was gonna bring this up if you didn't, but I
very
love that
good.
you did.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
this
do you want to
is
run me through what your understanding of this story is?
yeah. So I mean, this is how legends are made, you know. So like, there's this boss in Elden Ring called Melania,
Mm.
and the boss is extremely hard for a couple of reasons. The main two being that every time she hits you, she heals for 300 or 400 health,
Mhm.
which I think is a fantastic mechanic. But the thing that kills it is, and the thing that makes her really difficult is she has this move called Waterfowl, and it basically can reduce you to 0 HP from full health
Right.
quite easily. And it's like a series of like four things she does. And within those four things, she attacks you from like, I don't know, 5 to 15 times in like a second.
Right.
So like it does a lot of damage really quickly. And a lot of players are finding this really difficult, even with help. However, a legend has risen to the challenge of soloing her. And again, this is something a lot of people can do. A lot of people solo her, but he does it, or she, or they do it naked with a jar on their head, and they have the host sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
So what that means is they're being summoned to a world which automatically makes the boss harder, like more
Hmm.
health, more damage, and this let me solo her person enters the boss room after the host. The host sits back and just watches as this person emaciates Melania.
Yeah. How do they know to sit down? Is it just the username saying "Let me solo her"?
Yeah, yeah. So
They just assume that's the case.
there's like it's been in Dark Souls 3 I made a character that had a specific username for a boss,
Yeah.
because I just loved, there was this boss called Dragon Slayer Armor,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
like I just got to the point where I could beat that boss without taking a hit, and I had some username that was, summon me for Dragon Slayer only and sit back or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. Like, but I mean, compared to Melania, Dragon Slayer armor is really easy.
yeah.
And I think it's just so awesome to see that there are aspects of this game which I deemed unfair.
Hmm.
Like for me, her waterfowl move just sucks. I haven't worked out a way to dodge it, and so like I've gotten to her second phase a couple of times and all that. And the times that I got to that phase, she just didn't do the move. So for me, it's like become less about how good I am at the game and more about the RNG of
RNG.
her move
Yeah,
set.
yeah,
But like this person is showcasing that it can be done. Like I haven't seen any videos of this person, but I
mm,
assume they've got a strategy to dodge or get around that waterfowl move.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. There's been so much fan art and stuff put up on
Mm.
Twitter of this character, basically almost in the nude with the loincloth and the pot. Does the pot
Yeah.
lower your stats or something? Is that why it's so iconic?
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just like a dumb face mask, and there's
yeah.
it's like the Dark Souls way to be naked and
Wear some
put a
obscure thing on your head.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
very good. Anyway, yeah, I really like that story. It's very wholesome. It's very niche, and it soothes my soul. Final story is Elon Musk makes hostile takeover movements towards Twitter. And so this is very
Is
loosely based around video games. In fact, it's not at all. It's just about social media.
is there anything he does that isn't hostile?
No. Um, yeah. So there's a lot of people on Twitter being like, "We need to leave. It's time to go." And I think this might be the thing to do it. I think if it ends up happening, there's going to be mass exodus. But I don't know. Maybe that's just the circles that I move in. There's probably heaps of people who are really interested in sticking around and seeing what happens to the platform. But he's all very passionate about making it a free speech centric social media platform and privatizing it. And yeah, it's just not probably not what the platform should be. But you never know
Mm.
what'll happen. It will see. We shall see.
Yeah. So like how is Twitter managed right now? Does it have like an owner, like the creator?
There is CEO Jack Dorsey, though I don't. I think he is fairly loosely involved these days at the management of the platform. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sort of speaking out of turn here. I'm not sure. But I believe they're public, and I think Musk is just looking to buy majority
Right.
because he can. He has so
Yeah.
many billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a weird thing to do amongst all of the other things that he is currently already doing. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's just a real shame that for one, billionaires exist, but for two, the offer that I saw most recently was for $58 billion.
yeah,
And if that what he if he's got that amount, and like I was gonna say throw around, but it's obviously an investment.
Yeah.
But even so, I just think that amount of money is so obscene and can be used in just so many different ways that
Oh yeah.
it's just so sad to hear when things are bought and sold for billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like I feel like something is wrong when that's the case.
Yeah, there's huge issues in the world when things are at that gargantuan scale. There's
Yeah.
this really great video of this streamer named Reckful, who unfortunately committed suicide a few years ago, but he has this breakdown of like how much $1 billion is. And if I remember to, I'll put a link to it in the description. But he's basically like, oh, if you're doing a good for yourself as a streamer, you're making like 100,000, maybe $200,000 if you're doing really well. He's like, that's really well. And then he's like, oh, sometimes people come by streams, millionaires, maybe billionaires. Some people have $1 billion, and he like writes down how much they often donate. They'll donate a couple $1,000s, or maybe they'll donate 500,000. They'll just go wild and just donate a huge amount of money to the streamer.
Jesus.
And then he's like, oh well, now we're actually going to break down how much $1 billion is. And he goes through and he like goes in a text document and writes down like a million on rows, and then in the next row is like and he adds it all up to however many millions a billion is equal to in this text document. And he's like, okay, so here's how much a billion is. It's like scrolling down a text document with all of these $1 million lines, right?
Yeah,
and he's like, okay, we're gonna buy Lambos for all me and my friends, and he just goes through and like deletes the odd section of the document of a couple of these $1 million entries, and then he's like, okay, now I'm gonna try and find where I lost that money by buying all my friends Lambos, and he like scrolls through the document. It's like impossible to see that this person has lost any money because of the nature of the way that he's presented the information. It's just like, you know what? That's really bad. That's not good.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to tell that you've. I mean, you should always be able to tell if you've spent over $1 million, right? Like that's not a good sign.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah. And so yeah, I'll send it to you. It's very enlightening and cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But yeah.
the name Reckful rings a bell. I think he did Hearthstone streaming at one stage.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, he was pretty popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a wild thing. People are moving to, there's a site called Mastodon, which is a Twitter-like, but ethically owned, and there's no predatory advertising, and it's all like
Really?
open source and stuff. Yeah, looks
Really?
pretty cool. Yeah,
Mastodon.
Mhm.
Because I just haven't been interested in any of that stuff, and like I see Phoebe's Instagram every now and again, and it's insane how many ads are on there now.
yeah.
Like it's 3 posts and an ad, and that's just baloney. 25% ads.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I have on Twitter, I get heaps of ads too, and they're all crypto ads. And the number of times I click "I'm not interested in this" is eclipsing, the hundreds at this point, and I still get them. Anyway, so yeah, that's the news. I probably didn't want to end it on the on the all-consuming nature of the world, but there you go. That's
Bro, we're all over the place this one. I opened with the topic in the first minute. The news is right at the end, and it's doom and gloom. We're all heading to a ditch.
yeah. You know what? Here's what's beautiful is we get to sit down every Saturday and have a chat, and it's for a solid hour, and I fucking love it. And so that's
yeah, me too.
the highlight of my week most of the time.
Hell yeah.
So, yeah.
Hell yeah. Hopefully it's the highlight of your week as well, dear listener. I guess we'll see you all when it's almost the weekend again.
Yay, well done, bye.
Bye.